had to make the hardest decision since becoming a dad. I fired our night nanny because we were obsessed with safe sleep and couldn't trust anyone who didn't treat it the same way that we did. Strangely, after we took over and implemented our own regimen, our life got easier and way less stressful. In this video, I'll share with you the observe, wait, response cycle that we developed to reduce our nighttime decision load by more than 70%, and share with you the story of how I went completely overboard to fully automate this entire system. I'm Ivan, and welcome to the Parenting Lab. I won't teach you the grammar says experience. Everything we do here will be evidence-based parenting informed by data, research, software, and hardware to reduce as much guesswork as possible from the parenting work. I'm a computer scientist turned tech founder, and most recently, a dad for a 1-month-old beautiful girl, Belle. My wife also has a strong medical background, so she keeps us aligned with top medical bodies like the AAP and AHS. So everything we do here has safety and science at its top of the priority. Let me paint you a picture. It's 3 a.m. You're on the edge of your deep sleep. You hear a noise coming from the crib. Your brain instantly boots up. Start thinking, is she awake? When was the last feed? Is she hungry? Does she need a diaper change? What's going on? Do I need to get up? Should I go and warm the milk now? Those decisions make the already sleepless nights even harder to deal with, especially for parents who have to work the next day, myself included. So I constantly thought to myself, even with a night nanny around, I couldn't deal with the fact that I didn't know what was going on inside the crib. So I set out on a journey myself to discover how baby sleep really works, to understand how I could better optimize this system. So after doing quite a bit of research, it was quite clear that baby sleep is very different than that of adults. Their sleep cycle is way shorter than adults' 90 minutes. They are generally around 50 minutes or less. And then they switch between two primary sleeping stages. There's the active sleep and quiet sleep. During quiet sleep, well, it's kind of obvious. Their body is fully relaxed and their breathing pattern is quite regular and they won't be that easy to wake. But during the active sleep, that's where most of their brain development and growth actually happens. And this also accounts for most of the actual activities during their sleep, their movement during sleep, whether it's their heads moving about or whether they're doing stretches, moving their hands. And the interesting thing is, this active sleep accounts for more than 50% of the entire sleeping cycle, which means for a normal, healthy, feeding and growing well baby, movement is very much normal and sound is also very much normal during their normal sleep. Therefore, we cannot use their sound or just movement as the sole signal to decide whether it's time to actually wake them up for the next feed. You have to mix this with other feed signals, because if you did actually wake up for every single one of those moves, you'd go absolutely crazy, because one, you ruin their sleep, and then you run into the potential problem of overfeeding them because a baby will always take a bottle when given to them. And lastly, you would absolutely ruin your own sleep cycle because you would be so paranoid about every single little movement and you'd want to react to every single one of them. Now, armed with the knowledge of their sleep cycles, I thought, how could I use other data points to better help me make this decision? And after a bit of further research, it revealed that, especially for feeding during the night, you also have to look for other hunger cues. So movement itself, it's a useful one, but it cannot be the sole decider. You also have to layer in things like whether they are looking and chewing on their hand, but it's a bit harder if they are sleeping in a sleeping bag or if you have them swaddled up. But you can listen for the battling of their lips or a lot of the moving of their tongue and sometimes the rattling of their head. Those are all additional indicators and movements that you won't generally see during that normal sleep movement. So those are the things that you can layer in. But then I thought to myself, okay, but that's still very rough. how does things apply to Belle? Then I decided to sacrifice a couple of nights of my sleep and stayed up until 3 a.m., shifted some of my day work into the evening, kept my work on the side, and then also the baby monitor on the other. There you can see I also have my iPad still here and with the baby monitor still turned on. And I monitored every single little movement that came out of Belle. After doing this for 3 nights, a few patterns quickly started emerging. For one, she moved a lot more frequently the closer she gets to fully waking. And for those nights, to make sure I'm getting my guesses and met data correct, I waited until her to be, having her eyes open to be fully awake before actually picking up her up for the feed. Obviously, most of the time you do not want to wait until they are crying to feed them, but here, to enforce a bit of rigor, and I had waited for slightly longer than I would usually do. But don't worry, no baby was harmed during this phase, and I'm sure Belle has properly forgiven me during this phase after a few good feeds after that. But what was interesting though was then I realized when I layered in the feeding cues together with the frequency of the movement, intensity of movement, I could fairly accurately predict when she was going to next wake up. And then using this data for the next couple of nights, I was able to pick her up right before she became fully awake and before she started any crying or became, too fussy and way too hungry. Picked her up for a drowsy feed and even changed the diaper in the middle of the feed. Most of the time, even after a dirty diaper, she would keep her eyes closed and then finish the feed, put it back to the crib. All of this would take less than 25 minutes. I was amazed that I was able to do that because previously I had to spend at least another 10 to 15 minutes to put her back to sleep. And if I waited until she was fully awake, it meant that she was way too fussy and takes time to calm her down before I could feed her in the first place. This would last anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour, and that made the nights a lot harder to do. So after doing this observation, I did some, again, further research to find out that obviously there's no one pattern fits all for all babies, but these decision principles generally applies across all babies. What you should really try to do is take up a couple of nights. I know, sacrificing sleep is already difficult to do, but trust me, these few will be absolutely worth it. Take those time to observe your baby, note down the patterns that you see so that these will become your easy decision algorithm throughout the nights the next time you wake up. And obviously, other data points that you'll have to layer in. Things like when did you last feed her and when did you last change the diaper? And specifically for Belle, I found that during the evening, she was never hungry less than 2.5 hours. And also, she barely ever woke up for the need of a diaper change. Very occasionally, when there was a dirty diaper, she would wake up halfway through, but almost always she would only wake up for feeding sessions and actually have a poop during the feed, which made it actually quite easy for me to solve. Again, take time to observe your own baby. Now, with all of these patterns, well, I had to be awake to actually do all of this work. Putting my engineering hat on, how can I overdo this and make my life even easier? So I built this thing using this little chip over here together with a camera module that connects to my home Wi-Fi and then with a small program running on my computer. At this point, I know the non-techie part of you, feel free to jump to the next chapter. The geeks, feel free to stay. Using a bit more computer vision algorithm, first I tracked whether the baby was in the crib in the first place, and then how much she's moving, how long she's moving, and how frequently she's moving, recording all of these data points and into a database. And using that, I built up these dashboards that you can see. This clearly indicates when her exact movement is, how long those movements actually lasted, and then the intensity of each of those movements using the computer vision algorithms. And then during the night, when I woke up based on, for any reason, for noise, or maybe I just naturally woke up halfway through the night, I would quickly check the dashboard to see, okay, is there anything going on? Do I need to take any action? And most of the time, it was an easy decision. Okay, yep, it's all good. and go back to sleep. And so drop me a comment below and let me know if you also want the code. I'd be happy to share it wider if enough people actually wants this technical setup. But now, going to the basics, for those of you who don't want to go into a tech build like this, what could you do? And well, the principle is still very simple. Like I said, observe, wait, then respond. So every time you wake up, make sure that you're already taking notes about when the last feed was and when the last diaper change was and what you observed during the last wake up session. And the thing that we all know that as parents, our memory sucks, especially with being so sleep deprived most of the time. So write things down where you can, put it in the notes, note it down in whatever form you feel comfortable. And then when you wake up, you notice something, observe for 5 minutes. And if nothing happens and it's not been that long since the last feed, go back to sleep. Or if you notice something but it's not so vigorous and you don't observe any hunger cues, go back to sleep. And so you can use all of these data points to make a quick decision whether you need to stay up further and get ready for the feed, or if it's been long enough since the last feed and you notice the movement is getting a lot more vigorous, well, time to pick her up. And obviously tune these parameters based on how your baby acts. Take those nights to observe, and trust me, they will be absolutely worth your time. So with all those systems in place, it made my nights actually a lot easier to deal with. And I realized I could deal with nights, and even though my sleep get interrupted a bit more, but there never had to be that much thinking during the evening dealing with Belle. And I knew I was able to get her everything she needed during that time. And that was the final reason of why I was able to actually fire our night nanny. I mean, they are awesome people, but as a parent, I'd love to just be able to do everything myself, and I couldn't stand anything that I could not know why. So there you have it. This is the first episode of the Parenting Lab. Drop me a comment below of whether you think a fully automated system like this would help you further, or do you think it just adds more to your decision burden? And obviously, for the future episode, I'll continue sharing data points like this and also other interesting experiments that we run with routines, feeds, diapers, and all others, as well as experiments that failed massively but were really funny in hindsight. And of course, no baby is harmed during any of this process, and I wouldn't do anything to make my little baby girl unhappy. I hope you have a better night's sleep tonight than last, and I'll see you in the next one.